Hello everybody, Stephen here with Cardboard Coalition, and today I figured we'd bring you a how to play of Massive Darkness 2 Hellscape. This game is for 1 to 6 players, ages 14 plus, and the box says 120 minutes, but it really depends on what scenario you're playing and how familiar you are with the game. So I figured for this how to play, we're gonna just kind of go through the entire thing. I will have timestamps so you can jump ahead. And the timestamps I'm going to order with the chapters and subchapters or titles and subtitles of the rulebook. So let's go ahead and jump into this. So I want to start with just the basic rules that we go over. So not the basic rules, but the basic game overview. That's kind of what I mean. So what this game is you're in a dungeon. You can see over here, you're in a dungeon and you're trying to fight the darkness off. It's come back to your world, your planet, your dimension. You're trying to push it back. So the game overview kind of tells you how the game's played. You have a hero phase, you have an enemy phase, you have a level up phase, and then you have a darkness phase. So those are your basic phases. From there, we can play the game. All right, let's get into some basic concepts. First off, let's go over the die. So you have potentially 5 dice that you're going to roll. You have 2 attack die, 1 defense die, 1 shadow die, and 1 enemy die. So let's go ahead and talk about what these die do. Attack die are used and rolled for attacking. Obviously, right? Obviously, Stephen, they're attack die. Your defense die is rolled and used for defense. Your shadow die is rolled and used when you're in shadow. And the enemy die is rolled and used when you're attacking enemies and when enemies attack you. Now, let's go over some of the emblems, though they might be pretty self-explanatory. Humor me. So, first we have swords, right? What swords give us are attack points. Then we have mana. See if we don't have a full mana on here. That's fine. Then we have mana, right? The mana symbol gives you mana up to your max amount of mana. Then let's go in order. We have the defense die, which gives you defense. You have blanks and you have defense. Right? Then we have the shadow die, which gives you swords as usual, gives you mana, right? But also gives you this icon. And what this does is it shows you or allows you to do your shadow ability on your hero card. Then the last die we have is the enemy die, which does enemy things for us, right? So these scratch marks are undefensible hits. So if you get these, you cannot defend these hits. Then you have the claw. It's my good claw. All right, so then you have the claw. The claw, what the claw does is it sets off the enemy's abilities. And each enemy has a special ability. Sometimes it's for 1 claw, sometimes it's for 2, so on and so forth. But the claws set off the enemy abilities. All right. Here we have the hero dashboard. With this, we have the hero slot. This is where you would put your hero card. We have the experience tracker, where we can track the experience we get. It goes up to 9, and then you have 10s along the top. Next, we have the level tracker. This is a little token that kind of slides in there. So we have the level tracker, and this tracks your levels. After that, we have a space for the head, a space for the chest, a space for legs, a miscellaneous space. And then we have 2 hand spaces, right? And also, if you notice, this shows 2 hands in 1 space. This is for a 2-handed weapon, which means you can't put them in both spaces. On to the hero card. So with this card, what we get is an image of the hero, which matches their miniature that they have. We have the hero's ability. We have the hero's shadow ability. We have the maximum health, the maximum mana. we have the name of the hero, and then the hero class. All right, so now we have the skill cards. We have 3 of them out right now just so we can explain them really quick. So what we have here is the name of the skill. So this is Fatal Fury, right? On the back side, this is the back side of the card, you have the hero class, Berserker. You also have the hero level requirement, level 1. And if you see right here, this says level 3, right? Then down here, or in this beige area, you have the effects. So these would be the effects that you get when engaging with this card. Next, we have the treasure bag. It's connected to this symbol, either a token or on cards and stuff. But inside of this bag, we will get these tokens down here. So you have 3 types. You have common, you have rare, and then you have epic. These tokens are connected to different types of loot decks that you would draw from to get loot. Common treasure, rare treasure, and epic treasure. All right, item cards. So with item cards, there's some things that you need to know. It tells you what slot you can put that item card in. This, as you can tell from the dashboard, is a 2-handed weapon, so you can only have one. You can't have a weapon in both hands with it. Then the next thing we have is an image of the item, pretty simple. Then we have the name of the item. Next we have background color. Now the background color usually gives you rarity of the item, but sometimes it can tell you when the item is used. So you have green for common, blue for rare, as we saw just before. Purple is our epic. Beige is our starting. Gray are our consumables, which will also mark consumable by the icon that's right here. And also with consumables, they can be used at any time unless there's a designation when to use it. Now, what else we have on the card is the type of card it is. So this shows us that it is an attack card, and it's also a melee card. So we have the sword there. It shows us how many die or dice we get. And then it has a special ability, or may have a special ability. This says during attack, we can re-roll 1 die. Next we have enemy cards. So first we have mob cards, we have roaming monster cards, and we have boss cards. The first of the enemy cards is the mob card. And with the mob card, we have rewards. These are rewards that you would draw from the bag. You have the name, the mob's health for each individual person in the mob. You also have what they would roll in defense. There's a shield to show its defense and how many die you would roll. Then you have the level. This is the back of the card. You have the level that this card comes out on, so between levels 1 and 2. The yellow kind of helps us designate that as well. Then you have the special ability, and I already said the image. The second of the enemy cards is the roaming monster cards. Now with this, we have our rewards. These are what you would draw from your treasure bag. This is a reward that you just pull when you get the enemy. So you draw that from the deck for whoever beats the enemy. We have the name. We have the enemy's health. If you could see really close, it says per hero down there. The next thing that we have are dice rolled in defense and in attack. We have the level, just like the mob, color, and it'll tell you the level. Then we have their special abilities down here. And then we have their activation pattern right here. All right, on to the final enemy, which is the boss or bosses. This is 2-sided. You got 2 of the bosses for the base game. But on to the boss. So what do we have here? We have the boss's special abilities. And this depends on how many of the claws, right? that you roll, and it'll change on what they do based on that. Next, we have how many actions the boss gets. We have how many dice he rolls, his activation dice. Then we have dice for defense, dice for attack. We have his health, and if you notice again, it's per player, has that /hero. Then we have the combat abilities right here. Coming down here, we have their passive abilities. So these are abilities that are happening at all times. Down here we have the boss track. Once it gets to 3, it never goes back. It doesn't move. He just stays at 3 and he's super powerful. Then we have the boss's name, and finally the boss's image. All right, so here we have game tiles. There's 2 of them here. As you can see, they're even designated by this, but there's a tile, here's a tile. All right, the thing that we need to pay attention to when looking at these game tiles are zones. We have dark zones and light zones. Next we have chambers. Chamber is a room that's blocked off by walls. This designates the wall. If you can see right here, you could tell there's a wall right here. Usually there's a black line around the wall. Sometimes when it's the edge, well, you can kind of get the black line there a little bit. This is a chamber right here. And then these are walls, right? All right, so the last thing is that there are paths. Whenever you're out here in the corridors, there's no special rules for the corridors just alone. Rooms have rules of what spawns there and things like that, but the corridors have no rules. Last but not least, for the game overview, are the door cards. So these are your door cards. And what they tell you is it gives you the name of the card, right? It just kind of lets you know what's going on in that card, justifies what's going on. And then it has the rules that you abide by. You follow these as soon as you open the door before you deal with any mob tokens or any treasure tokens. You deal with what it says here on the card. This one says, spawn the next mob with 1 additional minion if possible. Keep this card close to the mob deck as a reminder. So the cards tell you what to do. So open a door to a chamber, flip the card, read the card, then fill out the chamber. All right, time for setup. So you can choose what you wanted to do. The book tells you to set up the heroes first, make sure everybody has their heroes picked and all that. And then you go ahead and set up the board and get all the cards out and tokens and all that stuff. I think the board, I usually do the board first, but you do it however you want. And let's go ahead and follow what the rule book tells us. So the first part of setup is the hero. Everyone gets a dashboard, they pick a hero. They take the hero card, and they take the hero miniature. So we can get a, nope, still doesn't want to focus in all the way. And then you get a ring, a base ring, you pick a color and you put that base ring on your hero. The next thing that you want to do is you want to take a level token and you slot that level token right into the level token spot. Bam! All right, then after that, you go ahead and take 3 pegs in your base color, the color of your base. You put it the 0 and 0 of the XP track, and then you put 1 at the 1 at your level token. All right, the next thing that you want to do is each player takes and picks a level 1 card, right? So skill, a level 1 skill. I can get this down. So they pick a level 1 skill. You get a whole bunch of them for each person. Like the Paladin obviously has 5 to start with, and there's level 2. We'll talk about that later. You pick one of the level 1 skills. And you go ahead and take that skill and you put it where you want down here. So we're going to go ahead and put it right here with that blessing area. I believe they're called blessing areas. All right, the next thing that you want to do is give the heroes some of the stuff that they need, such as armor, which goes in the armor slot, a weapon, and they get to choose which weapon. As you can see, this game comes with actually just different weapons, right? A set of different weapons. So they choose, we're going to go ahead and give the Paladin the rusty sword. It's not very appealing. And then the next thing they do is they choose a potion. I got these all mixed up. So or a consumable, however you want to look at this. Let's see, focus in. Woo, whoop, woo. All right, so this is a health potion, right? Heal 3, and then this is a mana potion, which gives you +2. The other thing that I completely skipped as I was running through all this is you want to make sure you look at your hero's mana and their health, and you give that hero enough mana and health that's represented here on their card. The other thing that you do is you go ahead and you give the hero their activation token, right? They've already gone. They've gone. These are actually quite useful while playing the game. All right. From there, it tells you to go ahead and put out the Lightbringer. I always want to call them Lifebringer. The Lightbringer tokens. And it's based on how many players you have. So here we go. Let's find it. The manual. I always call these manuals. All right, so as you see right here, it'll give you a chart. 1 to 2 heroes gets 1 Lifebringer token. 3 to 4 gets 2 Lifebringer tokens. 5 to 6 heroes gets, 3 to 4 gets 2. 5 to 6 gets 3. But you got that right there, so you don't have to worry about me messing up what I'm saying. All right, so it's over here. Once you got that, let's say we have some Lifebringer tokens out in the world. I always say, just as a side note, to go ahead and set your level cards that you're not using close to your hero. Just don't get them mixed up. All right, so there we go. All right, now that we have the heroes set up, let's go ahead and set up the rest of the board gaming area. This is where I kind of do things in a different order than it says in the book, where I put the tiles down instead of setting up the cards first. And the reason I do that, and it's completely up to you, is because the formation of the dungeon will change, and this takes up a lot of space, as you can tell. This is leaving no room for discard cards or a discard pile for each deck. So I go ahead and set up the board first, then I do the cards. So forgive me if I'm not following the numbers, but let's go ahead and set up the board. All right. It says this jumps us to, I think, like the 11th action or whatever, the 11th step. It says as a group, pick your quest. This is, I believe, the third quest. I do believe it was a quest I played the other night, but the third quest that we have in the booklet. So we go ahead and set that out. We put the tiles out, and it'll tell us what orientation and, where's my book? And what tiles to use. If I can jump in here really quick and find it. Ah, there we go. So as you see, it'll tell you the tiles right there. Let's get a little closer. So you have 2A, 4A, 5A, and a little bridge tile. And it shows you what way to put them. So side A and what order to put them in. All right, now that the hero's set up, let's go ahead and set up the board, the dungeon, as you will, and the rest of the playing area. Now, this is another part where I diverge from what it says, the order it says in the rule book. And how I do that is I set the board up first and then the cards and everything else, where the rule book says the cards, the board, then everything else. So forgive me on that, but I just think this is easier because the dungeon can change shape. The setup is obviously kind of, the game's a little bit of a table hog, takes up a lot of room, but I think it's smart to set up the dungeon first so we can put the cards in and fit everything in where we can to give everyone enough room to play around it. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into this. So the first thing it says, well, it's not the first thing. What it tells you to do at like step 11 or 12, I think it's 11, is it tells you as a group, pick a quest. Once you pick a quest, you go ahead and you start putting the tiles out. Now, how do you know how to do that? In the back of the book where you have your quests, you have your tile set up right here. So it tells you really easy. So 2A, 4A, and 5A. So we know that we want them on the A side, and we know the number that we want. And it shows you the formation, and then it shows us that there's a bridge to put out there. All right. So the other thing that it'll tell you on this, before I go throw it down, is it'll tell you how much loot to put in loot spaces based on the amount of players. It also tells you this in the setup, through the setup and the numbers in the setup. All right, so we got our board out. The next thing we want to do once we get that board out is we want to get all the different tokens out on the board. Now, the setup shows you when you go to that quest, it will show you how many different tokens you need of each thing, if you saw that when I was showing you guys and everything. But you go ahead and set everything up. This is treasure tokens. You want to blindly set those up because they have different kinds of treasure once you flip them over. You have door tokens. This is the closed side. There is the open side. It'll tell you where to put those doors. You have loot tokens, right? And like I said, it'll tell you how many to put depending on the amount of players that you have. So you might have 1 here, you might have 2, 3, who knows. You also have pillars that you could put out, right? And other obstacles. Well, the pillar is kind of the only obstacle. Then you also have minions. These are minion spawn areas, so a minion will spawn when you fill that room in, right? You have traps. You have this trap right here, which is just a bear trap. You also set this down with this side up, not the side showing. Oh, this is the bear trap. Sorry, I'm thinking of another one, which I'll show you in a second. You set it with the bear trap down. That one's fine, but you have other kinds of traps, like the spike pit trap, which has spike pits on the backside. There are some that tell you what you can do, and for some reason it doesn't want to pop. Oh, I know what's going on. I grabbed the one spike pit that doesn't tell us that there's any extra stuff. And I don't know where my bag of spike pits are, or traps. So some of them will tell you things on the back, like take X amount of wounds and things like that. All right. And so the other thing that you would put down are some of the other objects that would be in there, like the anvil. This says nothing on the backside. This is where you can upgrade weapons. We'll talk about that later. Then you go ahead and set in other things you can set in besides the anvil are fountains. This is definitely one of them that has something on the back. See, I'm not lying to you guys. Heal 4. So when you set these down, you want to set them down like that so you can't see what you get for going to that fountain, that trap, and so forth. Now, the next thing you do is you want to put down portals. Purple is a monster portal. This is for the monsters, right? You go ahead and put that down. Green are your regular portals. If you're playing, and the map will show you, let's see if I can find it again. The maps will show you what you want to use for each one. Oh, there it is. So we're at the passage. So if you see right here, it shows you, you guys can see it, see if I can get a little closer. It says 3+ players. You would put a portal right there. And then down here, it shows you 5+, because this plays up to 6. You would also put an extra portal down there. We did not add those portals because we are setting this up as if we were playing a 2-player game. I could have set it up for 4. I just did 2. Don't ask me why. All right. So the next thing that we want to do, once we have the tiles down, we have the tile boards down, we have all the little tokens down that we need here. Oh, and this is an objective token. Whoops, should have told you guys that. Objective token. I knew I forgot something. Put the objective token down. So once the tiles are down and all the tokens are down, then you can go ahead, or I would argue, you can go ahead and set the cards out. Now, the order that they do this is a little wonky, and I'm not following the order, but the cards that you would set out are your roaming monster cards by color, which indicates level. All right. Put out your mob cards by color, which is indicated, the colors indicate the level. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, same as up here. Then you go ahead and put out the mob item cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, color coded. Then go ahead and put out the treasure card or the loot cards. You have your common treasure, your rare treasure, and your epic treasure. So once you get all those out, you go ahead and put out your door deck with your door cards. After that, you go ahead and set your players to the beginning spot. They will also show you this in the dungeon. I should just keep the dungeon open at this point, right? It'd make this a lot quicker. All right, so for the dungeon, it'll tell you where to put your hero start in the dungeon. So we have our heroes in our hero starting space, so we don't get mixed up with where we want our heroes to start. How are they going to start their horrors? Next, you want to go ahead and set up your token pools. So you have your fire and ice. These are 2-sided, fire on one side, ice on the other. Then you have your mana tokens, which you have 1s and 3s. Then you also have your health tokens, which you have 5s and 1s. You have some other ones. Oh, there's a 10, right? I saw a 50 when I was shaking them out of the bag. I forgot there's a big 50 in there. You go ahead and set those up so they're in reach of everybody, right? Once that is done, you go ahead and you fill up the loot bag. And what you put in the loot bag is 5 blues and all of the green loot. So as I had said before, green, it connects to the color of the cards. So when you start the game off, you have a bunch of commons. I believe it's 10 commons. You have 5 rare already in your loot bag. So you go ahead and you get that loot bag ready to go. You give it a shuffle. Your loot bag is ready to go. After that, you go ahead and put down, or the last thing as it were, the darkness tracker right here. Once you put down the darkness tracker, you want to find the actual little tracking token, which I forget the name of it, and I have it in a bag. You guys will hear me grabbing it out of the bag really quick because I didn't set it out. Once you put your darkness tracker down, you go ahead and put this at the 1. You're at level 1. The beginning of, or round 1, at the beginning of the next round, you go. We'll talk about how this works. So you go ahead and put the darkness tracker next to the dungeon, and then you put the marker at the first darkness tracker marker, the darkness marker, at the first position. And then you have the game setup. Hero setup, game setup. We're ready to rock and roll and figure out how to play this game. All right, let's get into gameplay. So each round of the game has 4 phases. You have the hero phase, you have the enemy phase, you have the level up phase, then you have the darkness phase. We are set up to start exploring the hero phase. Within the hero phase, you have your actions that you can do. You get 3 of those actions. So with those actions, there's certain things you can do. You can move, you can attack, you could recover, you could trade and equip, and you could use your special ability. So you have kind of 5 areas that you can put those action points into. So this is obviously set up for movement. Old Greta, I believe it's Greta, or Gretchen, I think it's Greta in red, either way. She's here to help us understand movement. So this is the one thing I think people kind of get hung up on. For 1 action point, you get 2 movement points. For 1 action, you get 2 movement points. So with those 2 movement points, Greta has a handful of options. She can move 1 space, not use the other movement point. She can move 2 spaces over here if she wanted. She can move 2 spaces over here if she wanted. She can move 2 spaces here if she wanted. She could also move 1 space back here. Let's say Gretchen chooses that. She goes from here. She uses 1 action or 1 movement point to move back here. With the second movement point, she's going to open the door. Creak. Hello. Right? But there's something we need to do once that door opens. The first thing we do is we pull a door card. And with the door card, we pull one, we flip it over, and in this case, we got Treasure Trap. And it says the active hero takes 2 wounds. Wah, wah, wah. Old Greta gets 2 wounds taken from her, but she's got rage, so don't cry too much for Argentina. All right, next it says all zones in the chamber with loot tokens receive an additional treasure token. With treasure tokens, receive an additional treasure token. So we go ahead and put that there. We take this card and we say, phew, we put it in the discard pile, the door discard pile. All right, the next thing we do is we go ahead and we spawn enemies. So let's spawn some enemies. So there's 1 token. We go ahead and grab a card. Let's say that old Greta is at least at level 3 or someone in her raiding party is. And we go ahead and look at what we got there. So we have undead, right? So we go ahead and we place out our undead, right? So we're going to say that Greta's group has 2 people. So we're going to have 2 minions. And I realize that I don't have it easily accessible here. But we need the boss. Where is our boss? Here's our boss. 2 minions. Sorry if that got a little loud for moving those around. And the leader. So we have 2 minions and a leader. We go ahead and we put those out. The next thing we do is we want to draw a mob item card. So we go ahead and grab a mob item card and we slot it right underneath there, right? We slot it like that. So the leader is considered to be holding that, but when you roll, we'll get into that, they all get that. So we have the mob set up. The next thing we do is we set up the loot tokens. So we have 3 of them here. It says 3 loot because we got that extra one. And what we do for each one is we grab our jolly old loot bag, we give it a shake, shove our hand in there, and we go ahead and grab out 3 tokens. So we got our 3 tokens. We go ahead and remove these. And we put down our 3 tokens. So it looks like we got 2 commons and 1 rare. I was going to say special. 1 rare. All right. So the room is now filled. We are ready to rock and or roll. So the next thing that we want to think about is what Gretchen wants to do. She's going to use another action. She's going to use 1 movement point to come in the room. Since there are no enemies in this actual zone, if you could see there's a line right there, she's going to go ahead and go loot crazy. She doesn't have to pick them all up. She's going to save some maybe for friends, but she does want this juicy, juicy blue. So she grabs the blue, takes it off the board. Take that blue, you go ahead and drop it back into the loot bag for later. And Gretchen pulls herself a card. Looks like she got herself some greaves, right? She take the greaves. She can equip them right now, right? She could move the equipment that she has. If she had greaves there she didn't like, she could take those off and put them to the side of her board. If she doesn't, she can just put those there. She's not allowed to move anything else but the stuff in this section, right? Take whatever is there, the legs out, and put these in. All right. So Gretchen has some other actions. She can rumble and tumble, but I think we have some other people that want to help us learn how to do attack. As I say, combat. So not do attack. Let us learn attack. So let's go ahead and jump to that one. All right. Another action that we can take during our hero phase is the attack action. So right now we have Mathrin and Phaedra, I believe I'm saying their names right, I could be wrong, here to help us out. Now, there are 3 types of attacks. There is a melee attack, which means that the attacker and the defender, defender, are in the same zone, right? Then there is magic attack, which means the attacker and the defender are either in the same zone or 1 zone away. So right now, Mathrin can go ahead and attack these guys if he wants because they're 1 zone away and within his line of sight. Then we have the third one, which is ranged attack. A ranged attack can't be in the same zone. It has to be at least 1 zone away and within line of sight. And line of sight goes as far as they can see. So in this example, Phaedra has the skeletons over here. They're 1 zone away, so that works for her range attack, and they're within line of sight, obviously. She could actually see all the way to here. So she also can decide to go after the gargoyles down here. They're at least 1 away, they're 2 away, and they are within line of sight. Remember, line of sight goes all the way to a wall or the edge of a tile. You can see that far. Now, in this case, for the gargoyles, there is a pillar there, which does hinder her line of sight, which just means that she would roll 1 less yellow attack die when attacking. She was attacking anything past this pillar. So that's how that works. All right, now that we understand the different attacks we can do, your melee, your magic, and your ranged, let's go ahead and look at how an attack would actually play out. So for this example, we have old Greta, which I think I was calling her Greta, and we have some skeletons, right? So the first thing we want to do when we're putting together the dice pool is we want to look at the weapon that the attacker has. In this case, Get is the attacker, the skeletons are the defenders. So one of the things that you want to watch is if you have a weapon that has two different types of attack, melee or range, you have to decide which attack you're using and then follow whatever dice they tell you to use. Now, Geta here is using the big frickin' greatsword, so she gets 1 yellow and 1 orange die. Next, you check to see if the attacker is in the shadows, and this is just for heroes. No attacker in the shadows, so Geta does not get this shadow die. Next, what you want to do is you want to look at the defender. You go ahead and we have the skeletons over here. They get 1 blue defense dice. Gets put in there. Next, you want to look at the mob and see which of the monster die or black die that you are going to get. Now you count the minions in the mob, not the leader. So there's 2 minions in this mob and 1 leader. So you go ahead and put these 2 die in the dice pool as well. And then we're saying that Geta has battle rage that she can tap into, right? So for battle rage, for this example, we're saying this, for battle rage, she can spend 1 heart, right? She can get rid of that heart and add a yellow die. Now, this heart is one of her rages. And once you learn how to use Geta, you'll understand that. So it's not that she's losing health, it's she's taking one of her rage tokens and getting rid of it. Now the dice pool is set up. You go ahead and you take the dice, you give them a roll, and you look to see what you have here. Now, the attacker can resolve the dice in any order that they want to resolve. But once a die is resolved, there is no re-rolling or abilities that you can use to change that die. So right now we're just going to go with what we got here. And what we have is 1 attack, 2 attacks, 3 attacks. The skeletons had no defense, right? So it looks like the skeletons take 3 hits. Right, 1, 2, 3. 3 hits. Well, you always kill the minions first, and then, oops, knocking everything over. The minions first, and then the leader. So it takes 2 hits to take out a minion. So we're going to go 1, 2, which gets rid of one of these minions. And we're going to take this last hit, and we're going to put it on the other minion. I usually put them on the cards. In the book, it says to put it next to the minion so you know who's getting hit. But there we go. So we've applied our hits because there are no defenses, right? Now, if the attacker would have rolled a shield or 2 shields or something like that, they would have blocked some of our attacks. Now, the next thing that we're going to do here really quick is we're going to go ahead and get our mana. If Gretchen, there I go again, Geta has max mana, you don't get any mana. So her max is 2. Let's say she has max mana, so we can't grab mana for that. Otherwise, we can take mana. If she had 1 mana and she got 2 from here, we just get 1 mana. So that's how that works. All right, and then the last thing that we need to take care of here are these black dice. So nothing, but this is a wound. There is no way to block this wound, no matter what. It's a wound that happens, and Geta takes 1 hit. So she takes 1 of her health tokens and she throws it in the pile of health tokens. So let's say she went through a couple more attacks. Obviously the next die pool would look something like this, unless she can spend a heart to add a die, because we only have 1 minion left. Let's say, for example's sake, that Geta cleans up this mob, right? If she is the person who gets the killing blow, she goes ahead and receives what rewards she gets. And one of those is a rare treasure. So you have this rare treasure. What you would do is you take the token, you drop it back in the bag like that, and then you go ahead and you pull a rare token or a rare item, rare treasure. I can get this right. And she gets that rare treasure, and she can place it if she had her dashboard out and all that. But she also gets whatever the leader was carrying. In this case, it was the skeleton blade, right? She goes ahead and gets that, and she could place them if she wanted. This card would go in the discard pile, and combat is over. All right, so another action that we can do with our action points is trade and equip. The trade and equip action takes one hero to pull the action off. So let's say Geta here decides to do a trade and equip action. Everyone in her zone can use the trade and equip action, right? If Mathrin over here was not in her zone and Greta decided to do a trade or equip action, Mathrin cannot actually engage. It's just whoever's in the square. Now, if Mathrin's over here, they can engage. So Greta uses her action. Maybe she wants to equip some stuff. Maybe she wants to trade something with one of the other heroes in the dungeon. She goes ahead and does that. Once she does it, any hero can trade or equip stuff with that action. All right, another action that heroes can take is the recovery action, right? So let's say that Geta here wants to help her friends because she knows they're going to get into a tussle over here, but she's hurting pretty bad, or she's maybe lacking mana. So you can use one action, or she can use one action to get either 2 health, 2 mana, or a combination of 1 health, 1 mana. All right, heroes can also use an action to do their special ability. Mathrin here has spend an action point, gain 3 mana. And then you have something like this over here, the silver ring, which is spend an action. It says action right there, heal up to 3, right? So those are another thing you can use action point for your special ability or the ability on certain items. All right, one last thing, we have free actions. So you have consumables. Consumables don't go on your hero board, your hero tray. You put them off to the side. Now these can be used at any time, and consumables are denoted by the little item, the little bag item there, and their gray background. And they do things like we have gain 3 XP, heal 5, and deal 3 wounds to an enemy in LOS, line of sight. These can be used at any time by the heroes. They do not take an action point. All right, now that we're done with the hero phase, let's go ahead and jump into the enemy phase. Now, different groups of enemies work similar and differently, so we're going to go over each group individually. So first we're going to go over the mobs. And for the mobs, we have the old undead here to help us out. So for mobs, they get 2 activations. They will always attack first and then move. In this case, they have no one to attack, so the undead are going to move over into Geta's zone. She is just the belle of the ball. She's in all of our scenes. Now, they spent the first action to move there. Their next action, they will attack because they have someone in their zone. When they attack, when enemies attack, it's similar to how the heroes attack. There are some differences, so let's go over those really quick. The differences are, the heroes are now the defenders. The enemy is now the attackers. The enemy does not get to benefit or gather any, if I can find it, mana. Ooh, let's put it down here. They never get any mana. The enemy also do not get a shadow die to roll if they're in the darkness or not. All right, the other thing that happens is that the hero now takes the attack, so that means they lose health tokens. All right, so let's go ahead and run through this scenario really quick so you can just see it play out. So we got the undead attacking Geta here, and the first thing we do is we get their weapons. So the undead have a weapon on them. They have the skull scythe, which gives them 1 yellow and 1 orange die. Our defender, the only thing that she has on is her battered leather armor, which gives her 1 defense. And just so you guys know, if you're playing with 5 or more, there's an extra thing. You kind of flip the card over and it gives you something extra. But this scenario, we've been kind of running 3 all the time in examples. She gets 1 defense die. And then then you look at the mob for the enemy die, and because there are 2 minions, you get 2 enemy die. And same as before, now you have your die pool, you go ahead and shake them, and you roll them out. So in this scenario, we have a good roll so I can explain things. Remember these, where are they at? Where are they at? We can get them. These are hits that the defender cannot defend, right? These are undefendable hits, but they didn't roll that. So what we got here is we have a sword. Mana doesn't count, but Greta has 2 defense. So they throw 1 attack, she has 2 blocks. That's a nothing, that's a nothing. They have a claw, which activates their special ability here. Now, what this says is during an attack, if they get 1 claw and they're attacking, they get 2 yellow dice and the mob suffers 2 wounds. So one of these guys takes 2 wounds. And it takes 5 to kill one of them. They're at the orange level, but unluckily for Geta, they get 2 more yellow dice. So they'll go ahead and roll those right now. And with that, they got 2 additional hits. Mana does not count. So they have a total of 3 hits. There are 2 blocks. So Geta would have to take one of her health tokens and throw it away. All right, so when roaming monsters activate, it's not that they have activations and they follow that, but they have an activation pattern. So right here we have Andra. I think it's Andra. If Andra is in the dungeon, she does something, right? So she's on the board. If Andra is not in the dungeon, then she does something. So if she's in the dungeon, Andra attacks the hero with the lowest health in line of sight, if possible. Then remove Andra from the dungeon. If Andra is not in the dungeon, place Andra in the zone adjacent to a hero with the lowest health. Then Andra attacks that hero. So Andra has a pattern. She kind of swoops in and swoops out. She doesn't stay on the board and move around. All right, hero phase done, enemy phase done. Now it's time to go into the level up phase. So during the level up phase, the hero must level up, right? They must spend their XP and level up. So when you do that, the first thing you do is you decrease your XP level. So right here, we need 17. No, I can't read. 12. We need 12 XP to level up. So you would take this, drop it down to 5.2. I can get it to go in there. And then this would go down to 0, showing that we've spent 12 XP, and then we would level up. All right. After that, you go ahead and you increase your health. So Phaedra here would get 2 more health added to her health pool. She would get 1 mana added to her mana pool up to her max. No, this adds up her mana. I'm sorry, not even up to her max. It increases her max. So from here on out, you always look at health plus whatever level, and then mana, which you guys can't see right now, plus whatever level. The next thing you do is you take one of these loot tokens, treasure tokens, and you go ahead, hit the camera, set it in the treasure bag, and shake it all up so it's ready to go. The last thing you do during level up phase is you go ahead and level up skills, right? Now, to do that, you have to be at the skill level that you have. So Phaedra is now at level 4, so she can do these 1s, these 2s, these 3s, these 4s. She cannot do her 5s yet, though, all the way up to 4, because she's at level 4. Now, what she can do with that is she can upgrade if she wanted to, or she can get a whole new skill, right? Something like, I don't know. Let's grab this one. She can get a whole new skill because it says level 2, right? and she can do that, or she can level up a skill she has. Now, if she decides to level up a skill she has, she can't go ahead and buy this skill if she didn't already have shadow form. She has to already have shadow form and she has to rank it up. So she could decide to rank it up to shadow form 2, which is a level 3. This was a level 1, she's level 4, she can do that. So she'd go ahead and get rid of that one and then add that one to her tricks. And that is how you level up or do the level up phase. All right, the last phase in a round is called the darkness phase. During this phase, your round tracker moves up 1. And this represents it getting darker and darker and more baddies coming, basically. If in the moving up 1 space, it lands right here, you have something that would happen. These are roaming monsters. You have your roaming monsters, you get some loot in your loot bag. These are regular mobs, so on and so forth. All right, so how do you go about spawning a roaming monster? Well, first off, you check to see which player has the highest level. If their level 1 to 2 is the highest level, yellows. If the highest level is 3 to 4, orange. The highest level is 5, then we go ahead and do the level 5 roaming monsters. Now, what you would do is you would just take a card and you would flip it over and you would take that miniature and spawn it at the roaming monster portal. The purple portals are your roaming monster portals. As I had said earlier, the green portals are your mob portals. So you would grab the miniature and you would place it at the roaming monster portal. Now, let's say that you go to grab a roaming monster at that level and they're all in the discard pile. You would just go ahead and take the discard, shuffle it up, draw a roaming monster. Now, let's say maybe you're the next level up, and these heroes are a bit of scallywags, and when you draw that first monster, you find out that that monster is already on the board. What you do in that case is you swap out the cards. So you would take the level 1 card that's attached to the roaming monster that's on the board, you would take that away, and you would put in the level 2, this is the level 3-4 roaming monster, all right? You do not get rid of the tokens that are on the card, right? That does not change. Any hits that this monster has stays with the monster. It doesn't go away. Then, because you had to level up the monster because it was already in the dungeon, the monster gets 1 activation right then. All right, so you go ahead and go through that. Each round has their darkness phase at the end. This moves up 1, up 1, 1, 1. Each phase, it moves up 1. If it gets to 9, it has to move again. You flip this board over. Then you have this 1, 2, 3 track. You put it on the 1, nothing happens. 2, mobs. 3, nothing happens. 4, roaming monster. If you get another darkness phase, you hit another one, it goes back to 1, so on and so forth until you either die or you beat the game. All right, so let's go ahead and jump to how you win or lose the game. We'll cover this stuff, I promise, but let's go ahead and jump here so you guys have a firm understanding. So, winning the game is meeting the condition that's set up in that quest, or winning the quest, right? Is whatever condition set up. So in the passage, to win the quest, you have to escort your little buddy all the way to the portal. If you get him there, you win, right? Now, losing a quest, right? If one of the losing conditions are met, you lose the quest. So just like sometimes there's winning condition, there's win conditions, sometimes there's losing conditions. The other way that you can lose is if you run out of Lifebringer tokens, right? So remember, these are to bring people back, right? So how you lose is if you have spent whatever amount that you have, at the beginning of a hero phase, someone needs to be brought back, right? They would have to flip a token, right? They have to flip one of these to be brought back. If there's none left, the players lose the game. All right, now that we know how to play the game, there are some additional rules that are in the rule book for us to understand even more in depth how things work. First thing we want to talk about is shadow and light, right? So it's fairly simple to understand. If it's a darker square, you're in the shadow. If it's a lighter square, you're in light. Usually they make the lighter squares a different color. Darker squares are usually this blue-gray. So shadow, shadow, light, light, as you can see. A lot of times with the yellow light, you get torches, but sometimes you don't have any torches. Bridges are always in shadow. So if you ever go to a bridge, you're in shadow. Now, why do we need to know this? Well, if the hero fights in the shadow, when they make their dice pool, they get to grab this die. They add it to their roll, which can give them swords, it can give them mana, and it can give them this thing, this half light, half dark face. I don't know what it's called, but it allows them to do their shadow ability, right? Which usually is fairly helpful. Now, there are different colors, but they're still shadow and light. Sometimes they're a little harder to tell. So let's flip the board. As you can see here, it's pretty easy to tell. The reds are pretty easy to tell. And then you have the grayish blue shadow still, similar colors. But then you also have, let's see if I can get this to pop up, some maps where they have this purple and blue. Same thing, these are light, right? These are all light. And then these are shadows. So it's still the same thing. If the hero is in the shadow, they get to roll this die when they attack. If they're in the light, there might be some abilities that they get because they're in the light. So it's good to know shadow and light. All right, the next thing to understand is dungeon level. And how you figure out a dungeon level is you check all the heroes that are in that party that are playing, and you see who has the highest level on their level track. Things that you would use this for are for trying to figure out mob decks that you draw from, roaming monsters, and some other things. All right. So in this scenario, let's say these two heroes were raiding the dungeons together, and we needed to draw a mob card. So we would look over here at Irk and go, oh, level 2. So it must be a level 1-2. Or if we were looking for roaming monsters, might be a level 1-2 roaming monster. But then we have to remember Mathrin over here. I know I'm probably screwing up these names. Mathrin over here is at a level 3. So we would not draw from either of these stacks if needed. We would draw from one of these two stacks. So for dungeon level, look at your characters, all of them, and see who's the highest. Whoever is the highest dictates what the dungeon level is. All right, so bosses, the boss phase, boss battle, boss fight, what have you. That is going to be triggered once certain conditions are met in the quest. Once that happens, you go ahead and you put the boss in its spawn zone, spawn tile, that part of the dungeon, right? If there are 2 tiles that make that up, choose one of the 2 tiles, put the boss in that tile. Once you hit that, then you go ahead and you bring all the heroes into the same tile that the boss is in. Next, the heroes get to recover up to their full health and their full mana, all the way up to full. The players then get to perform a level up phase, where they level up their hero. Next, you remove all tiles from the board. All the tiles go away. After all the tiles are removed, then you go ahead and get rid of the darkness tracker, and you replace it in a way with the boss board. Down here is what replaces the darkness tracker. And you go ahead and take the darkness token. I always forget what this is called because this seems like a tracker to me. The darkness track, and this would, I guess, would be the tracker. You go ahead and put it on the first spot on the boss's darkness tracker. All right. So once that is done, you go ahead and start a new hero phase. So heroes get actions. Now, the difference when fighting a boss, there's some differences, but one of the big differences to keep in mind, instead of the boss having to wait for the enemy phase to attack or do anything, what it does is it goes hero phase, boss phase. This guy's looking away from the boss. Hero phase, boss phase, hero phase, boss phase, or enemy phase. So hero phase, enemy phase, hero phase, enemy phase, hero phase, enemy phase. The boss gets an enemy phase for every hero that activates. Now, the other thing to look at when you're looking at this stuff is the boss board over here. So whenever the boss activates, so let's say Mathrin, I believe his name is, he goes and tries to attack the boss. After his turn is done, the boss gets to go. And the first thing the boss does, or first thing you do, is you look at how many actions the boss has. If you remember in the beginning explaining the cards, the asterisk, you look down here and it places, he has how many actions that this is sitting at. So right now the boss has one action. At the beginning of every one of the boss's actions, the boss gets to do his special abilities, which are right here. So you roll the 2 dice and you see what you got. You always ignore these marks, the scratches, but you look at the claws. So he got 2 claws and it tells you based on how many claws what he does. Even if he gets 0 claws, the boss is going to do something. So on the boss's action, right now he gets 1, always activates, and then they do whatever they need to do, move or combat. But they get one free special ability at the beginning of all their actions. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is everything else kind of goes the same besides the heroes go, enemy phase, hero phase, enemy phase. Hero activates enemy phase, like that. In the darkness phase, this moves up 1 for each darkness phase. And you do immediately whatever it's, well, you don't do immediately, but the boss immediately gets whatever it says there. So here he has 1 action, here he has 2, 2, 2, 3, right? So you just go ahead and follow that. Once this gets here, if you go into another darkness phase, this doesn't go forward, right? And just so you guys keep in mind, it goes hero phase, right? The enemy phase kind of goes with the hero phase. So during the hero phase, hero activates and enemy activates, hero activates, enemy activates. Then you do the level up phase. Then you go ahead and you do the darkness phase, and then it goes back to hero phase, and you just keep doing that until either the heroes lose or the boss loses. Now, there's one more difference that goes on in this. So, in this, if you're going to spawn some mobs, right? Because some bosses actually, you spawn mobs in there. You do it the same way that you do the mobs in the regular dungeon when you're running around, right? So if you don't have a card for that mob, right, you go ahead and grab a higher level card. You look at that mob, they get 1 activation, then you discard, or you put that card out, so that's the mob's now their card, and then you draw another mob card until you get a new mob in the room with the heroes. So just remember, if mobs spawn during the boss battle, it is higher level, change it out, give that mob an extra activation, and then draw another card until a new mob enters the chamber, because it will be this 1 tile. All right, on to special abilities. The game has a lot of different special abilities, and there's a lot of different places that you can find these special abilities. Normally you'll see them in black bordered areas or these kind of beige areas. Now, with an ability, something must trigger that ability. There's the trigger, and then there is the effect that you get from that ability. So some of the triggers can be type, timing condition, cost, or requirement, and then you get the effect. I keep calling it ability, I'm sorry, effect. All right, so some of the timing conditions are things like attack. If you're attacking, you can do this. Range attack, if you're doing a range attack, you get that effect. Defense, get that effect. Combat, well, in combat you get that effect. Moving, well, moving you get that effect. And then this one is anytime. At any time you get that effect. The other thing that you can get a trigger can be cost or the requirements. So right here, cost 1 action, you get that effect. Here you have to be in the shadows, right, and attacking. Here you have to be in the light and attacking, and you got some mana costs there. Over here, X mana, but this costs 5 mana, right, to be able to get that effect. Right here, you have to be attacking and take 1 wound to get this effect. Over here, you have to already be wounded 3 times during an attack to get that effect. Right here, you have to be dual wielding a weapon when you attack to get that effect. And over here, This one has a cost of claws, right? So you have 2 claws. You have to be in defense, but you have to have 2 claws. All right, so we've gotten the trigger condition. Let's go ahead and look at some of the effects. And I felt like the best way to do this is maybe just get this out so we can run through them really quick. We're going right through the rule book. So X amount of swords, right? That adds swords. X amount of shields adds shields. X amount of mana adds mana. X amount of different dice type adds dice. X amount of fire adds fire. X amount of ice adds ice. X amount of rerolls, how many dice you can reroll, right? X amount of enemy dice that you can reroll. So X amount of movement points costs so many movement points. Subtract shields, right? It makes you lose shields. Ignore X. This is ignoring X amount of results. Heal X, lets you heal up to X. This gives you a little note telling you if you have fire on you and you get a heal X, you can take one of those fire tokens off. Down here is an infinity mark. It means you get this ongoing, right? More than once per the same action, right? Once per round, once per combat. So that means the effect would happen once per round, once per combat. Okay, everybody, let's talk about condition tokens. And right now we have fire and ice. So we have fire set up here. And how the fire token works is for every fire token on a minion, on a roaming monster, right, or on the hero, gets taken off and then a die is rolled. So in an instance with the minions, so let's take one of these off, you roll the die. If you get a hit, it's a hit. Of course, mana doesn't count, but if you get a hit, that means they get one more hit. Then you do it again for every die that's there. So you'd roll the die again. There's 2 hits. You got another one over here. We roll it again. 3 hits. We got one right here. We roll the die a 3rd time. And they would get 4 hits. So they would end up getting 4 hits on their guy. So it takes 5 to get rid of one of them, so they would still be in the fight. The same would go for the roaming monster. You would take one of the tokens, you would drop a die, there's a hit, take the next one, roll that die, no hits. So the roaming monster gets 1 hit. And then of course with our heroes, same thing. You take the fire token off, you roll the die, 1 hit. That means that hero loses a health. And that is how the fire works. All right, so the frost condition token, which I believe I might have called it ice in the fire one, but the frost condition token. This is how it works. So if a mob or a hero has a frost token on them, when they go to perform an action, they don't take that action. It's like they're frozen, right? And then you take that token away. In the case of the mob, let's say there's 2 tokens on them. They get 2 activations. Their first activation, you take a token away. Second activation, take a token away. Now, let's say we have a roaming monster here. A roaming monster, if there are 2 activation tokens, they do not activate. If there's only 1 activation token, they ignore the activation token. They would still activate with 1 on there. Now, if there is a boss on the board, they would ignore all frost tokens. They take them, you can still put frost tokens on them, it might be for other effects, but when they go to activate, they go ahead and ignore all the frost tokens. All right, on to special tokens and zones. So first, let's look at the traps for our special tokens. We have 2 types of traps. We have spike traps and bear traps. So with a spike trap, if a hero moves into the zone with a spike trap, they go ahead and flip that spike trap and they take as many wounds as it says on the back side. In this case, 1 wound. Now, some spike traps have nothing, which means they would take no wounds. Then you remove that token from the board. Bear traps are similar. So let's say our hero uses one of their actions to get 2 movement points. They're going to spend 1 movement point to go in a zone where there's a bear trap. Now, because they went into this zone, they lose their 2nd movement point and they have to stop. Now, next they go ahead and flip over that token. And the token says lose 1 action. So now this hero is down to 1 action left. Now, there are bear traps that have nothing on the back. In that case, if this was the case, the hero would have moved into the zone. They still would have moved in. They would have lost their 2nd movement point. They would have flipped this over. Says nothing. Then they have 2 actions still left. All right. Next we have pillars, which we've gone over pillars before in the line of sight. Now, if a hero is shooting through, let's say that there are zones over here. If they're shooting through a zone with a pillar or into a zone with a pillar, they lose 1 yellow die. If losing that yellow die causes them not to be able to do the attack, then the attack does not happen. All right, so fountain tokens. A hero can use 1 movement point to engage with a fountain token, which means they flip it over. In this case, it allows them to heal up to 4. They can heal up to 4. Remember, that's their max, up to their max, and they can heal 4. Then they would get rid of this token. Remember that your heroes can never go over their max health. Now, another thing that we have are treasure chests. If a hero's in a zone with no enemies, they can spend 1 action point to go ahead and flip over that treasure chest. Treasure chests, these are regular treasure chests. They have 2 tokens in there. This is common. They also have 2 rare tokens. So if the hero flips over that chest, they go ahead and draw that many, the amount that it shows, of cards from that treasure deck. In this case, it would be common treasures, so the green deck. And in this case, it would be, see if I can get to focus. In this case, it would be rare treasures, which would be the blue deck. Now, the great chests work similarly. The hero is in the zone, no enemies. They can spend 1 movement point to go ahead and flip that over. The great ones come with 3 tokens. That means that they can grab 3 cards from the rare treasure deck. Now with great chests, you can also get this one, which would allow you to grab 3 cards or draw 3 cards from the epic treasure deck, or the purple one. All right, so then we move on to the anvil. Now, with the anvil, what goes on is you get rid of 3 cards. You get rid of these 3 cards so you can craft a new weapon or draw a card from a new deck. So how this works is you get to draw a card 1 higher than the lowest card in your hand, or the lowest card that of the 3 that you're getting rid of. So in this case, it's a common. So that means you can draw another common card if you wanted to. Or you have something like this, where you do have an epic you're getting rid of. You have 2 rare treasures. You can get rid of these, and you would be able to grab 1 rare treasure. Now, with all that said, there's always the choice of 3 commons to get a rare treasure, right? Or you have 3 rare treasures to get yourself an epic treasure, to be able to draw from the epic treasure. Now, starting equipment, let's see if we can zoom, and consumables are all considered common. All right, the other thing is that your hero, while here, can use as many movement points as they want to craft. So let's say they ended their turn there. So at the beginning of their turn, they're at the forge. They have 3 actions. That gives them 6 movement points. If they wanted to and they had enough cards, they can craft over and over again until they're done. Now let's move on to zones. So we have over here bridges. Bridges are always placed outside of the tile. They are always considered dark zones. And for all game intents and purposes, they are considered a tile by themselves. The other special tile that we have are abyss tiles right here. So with an abyss tile, it shows in this one, there's no floor. Heroes cannot move into or through an abyss tile. Same with enemies, they cannot move into or through an abyss tile. So the last thing that I would like to talk about is the set weapons. So in the base set, the only thing we have is Shadow Bane. Right? Now, how you get these sets is as you're flipping through your rare treasures. So we flip through these, you can see they have these Shadow Bane set, right? So what happens, let's say we have one of these, is soon as we have 2 of these equipped, that's the same one, let's go with this one. Once we have 2 of these equipped, we go ahead and we get the Shadow Bane card for our character. So for argument, let's just say we have the Shaman, as you can see. We have them for all the different characters. We'll just take the Shaman, we'll flip it over. And this gives us one more ability that we have when we have the at least 2. So up here it says minor power, 2 plus set items. Then you have greater power, which is force plus set items. So if you have 2 of the set items, let's see if we can get these in shot better. If you have 2 of the set items, you go ahead and you get this power. Now, if you were to have more set items, so let's say you had 4 of them. Let's see if I could set it up so it works that way. I don't think it's in here. If you have 4 of the set items, oh, there we go. 4 of the set items, this one actually doesn't work, and we'll explain why. But if you have 4 of the set items, then you can do the 4 or greater one, right? So with 4 set items, we can go ahead, there we go. With 4 or more items, we can go ahead and do their greater ability. Now, that means we get both these abilities that we can play through. If you ever change out one item, then you have to go down to whatever one fits. So this is 2 plus, this is 4 plus, so we have 3. If you get rid of 2 of them, then you're down to here, so on and so forth. Now, another thing to keep in mind is if you're flipping through and you pull an item that's for a class that's not being used. So let's say in this example, we're not using the rogue class. If the shaman was to pull this, they would go ahead and discard it, and they would draw just another card from the epic treasure deck. And this time they didn't get a Bane set. But that is how the Bane sets work. All right, and that's everything you need to know to play Massive Darkness 2 Hellscape. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope the timestamps helped you guys go to the parts that you needed, or you enjoyed watching the whole thing and you hung in there with me for the whole thing. But that's everything you need to know. I will do a video and jump into how each of the hero classes work, but that'll be a whole nother video because I'm sure this one's long enough. Thanks for hanging in there with me. I'm Steven with Cardboard Coalition. And as usual, help us grow this coalition by liking, commenting, subscribing, hitting the bell notification. Let me know, comment, let me know if you like this way of explaining the rules, breaking it down, zooming in, showing different parts. If you like the editing of it, probably not because it's just me and I'm not an editor. But anyways, thanks for hanging out. I'll catch you in the hero guide. Bye.